Well, schools operating virtually because of COVID-19 will be fully funded this fall. Last month, lawmakers warned of possible cuts if students were learning only online. As Jeannie Lindsay reports, the State Board of Education approved a plan this week that education leaders say gives schools and educators much needed stability.
The board's plan allows the state to use data from the last time students were counted in February to determine how the state should fund them this fall. The change means schools will receive 100% of state funding for students learning remotely because of COVID-19 this fall. If a school and its students were virtual full-time before COVID, they'll only receive 85% of per-student funding per state law.
So the carve-out really is to ensure that we are properly funding students that are virtual due to COVID, but we're being fiscally responsible and not funding true virtual students that would be virtual regardless of the pandemic.
The action temporarily works around rules meant to dissuade schools from offering virtual instruction full-time, but state officials say they hope schools continue working to provide safe in-person instruction when possible. Education leaders say the next question is how lawmakers will approach state education funding during the legislative session that starts in January with significant revenue shortfalls caused by the pandemic.
And Jeannie Lindsay joins us now from the newsroom. Hi, Jeannie.
Hello.
So is this a temporary measure, or does this mean funding is secure for the entire academic year?
So this is just temporary. The state board wanted to focus specifically on the fall student count date, which is happening in about 2 weeks. The legislative session is going to be in January, and so when we get to February, the next student count day, where funding will be talked about, lawmakers will already be kind of on deck, ready to respond to how schools are looking at that time. So the state board just wanted to provide this stability for right now, while we're still seeing plenty of students and plenty of schools online.
You know, the state superintendent praised the board's move, but then was already talking about the legislative session because lawmakers will be crafting a new state budget. Didn't Governor Holcomb ensure schools that their funding would remain stable?
Right. So Governor Holcomb was already talking about the current state budget. So when lawmakers come back in January, they'll be deciding the next 2 years of funding. And Indiana is already seeing revenue shortfalls because of the pandemic. So they'll have to figure out how much they're putting where with a lot tighter of a revenue pool than they would. So education funding will stay on track for now, but that next 2 years is a bigger question mark. And education advocates are hoping that they can still be making progress on things like teacher compensation that were going on before the pandemic.
Okay, we just have about 30 seconds. Some school districts have been very honest and said, the reason they're either teaching in person or moving to that soon is because of funding. Do you think we'll see more schools moving online now that the funding issue isn't sort of an issue anymore?
Well, funding is definitely one factor here, but so is COVID-19, right? So I think plenty of educators and plenty of schools want to be in person if it's safe to do so. But this funding change really gives schools a peace of mind depending on what their decisions are. So whether they're in person or virtual, they have some of that security for now.
All right, Jeannie, thank you very much.
Yeah.